Welcome to this meeting of the Senate and House Working Group. There are four things that we're going to be looking at, or three things we're going to be looking at. Number one is a response to the House offer on 5/22/25. Secondly, Representative Lee had amendments to propose to the victim restitution sections that are in the Senate bill. Senator Putnam is then going to explain what the items are that we are interested in the House considering regarding ag policy. And then we are still waiting for response from the leaders group on whether we are permitted to use June accelerated as a revenue source, or whether we need to stay with the leaders agreement, which only called for aid cuts. And if they allow June accelerated, then the Senate has a job to do to work that out regarding our proposal. If it's aid cuts, the same thing happens for the House. So beginning with what we would like the House to consider, we have a couple of additions to the proposal from Friday, and only one thing that we removed. And the thing that we removed was the provision, it was dealing with an ag policy, and we would like the ag policy issues to all be together in a group, and Senator Putnam will be discussing that later. So with the document at 11:27 a.m., you will see with regard to Senate Article 1, House Article 1, that we have accept that, except for, as I just mentioned, setting aside House Section 1. In Property Senate Article 2, we are proposing the airport property tax exemption. That is something that we are adding, but excluding lines 30.6 to 30.9, because it also touched on another topic. Mr. Sylvia, what was the other topic again?
Madam Chair, members, those lines are where the provision for grazing activities.
Oh, yes. And since we wanted a discussion on all the ag things to be together and not included here, our proposal now excludes that. Then sections 2, 13, and 14, attachments and appurtenances, were there before. We would now accept sections 3 and 5 in the Senate, and also accept the Red Lake exemption, and the Mille Lacs language that excluded or mentions that parking facilities are not included, and that square footage is not referred to in that provision. Senate Section 6 is a new one. This is Senator Dibble's bill in dealing with conservation easement reduction. Senate Section 9 is the income averaging for Class 4D. Section 10 is an addition. It is Class 1C homestead resorts. That is Senator Housechild's. And then Section 15, 16 were already in the proposal. We would add the border city changes, which are just opportunities for the border cities, modernizing how they manage their economic development. Section 26 was already in, and we also now are accepting what is it? House Section 1, which was dealing with Alliance, which is a different take, also with hardly any fiscal impact on how to treat Alliance. And just be sure I get that correct. Commissioner Markwart, the provision that the governor had in his bill, would you, do you recall that? And then we'll go to what the House was. The House Section 1 for Alliance is kind of the same, attempting to get to the same result with a different twist on it. And the Senate is here suggesting that we do the House provision. But if you would say what the governor's was.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so in the governor's tax bill, it was just to protect the tenants. It didn't, it just dealt only with the tenants, didn't deal at all with the private charity alliance or that type of thing.
And so it would, the attempt, as I understood it, was to protect the tenants from being charged the personal property tax. And then in the House, the approach was dealing with the taxability of the property itself, and that there were some directions there that were to the property, not that would indeed protect the renters, but that was not the focus. Then in the property tax aids, that's the same that was in the House offer on the 22nd. We had already dealt with the TIF article, and that was a closed article, so that's not in this proposal. And then in Senate Article 10, House Article 7, all of 14, 25, all of those provisions are part of this proposal. So essentially, it's the same as the House offer 2, with just adding a few more sections from the from Senate articles. Any questions from the members of the House? Representative Davids.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under property, I'm new here. Under property, Senate Section 6, conservation easement reduction. Could you explain that one a little more?
This is Senator Dibble's proposal, but I will give you a 30,000-foot explanation and then turn to Mr. Sylvia. It applies, I believe, only in the metropolitan area. Is that correct, Mr. Sylvia? It's only in the metropolitan area, and it permits the assessor on property that has a conservation easement to assess the value of that property as its true market value. And the result of that is, Senator Dibble, I think, would say, is a more accurate valuation in terms of property taxes that would be available on that property to, especially to Hennepin County, but maybe to other counties as well in the metropolitan area that have a lot of property with conservation easements. Senator, Mr. Sylvia,
Madam Chair,
does that get it, or do you need more?
I think this is the Nadeau language in the House, Metro only, we're good with that. Or I'm good with that. So we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Any other questions? Then Senator Putnam moves that the working group accept the Senate response to House 52225 offer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I mean, we just want time to consider your offer and discuss it
Okay.
among the House.
Thank you, Representative Gomez. I would, certainly you may have that time, but the only things that are in it that are not yours from 522 are the making sure that the airport property tax exemption does not have the language referring to the grazing. It's in the same section, it turns out, that would be, that we would want set aside to have a more general discussion on the ag properties. The conservation easement reduction, this class 41, and the homestead results and the border cities changes. So other than that, this is your proposal. But we certainly can wait and go on to the other parts of our agenda. And then if you need time to recess and talk about those 2, 3, 4, 5 provisions, we can wait until and take a vote then. Agreeable? Okay, so, and this, just like it was on 522, is an all or nothing vote and without any deletions or any additions. So next, I was contacted by Representative Lee. Is she here? Oh, good. I wonder if she could come forward and explain the conversations through texting and emails that she and I had a little bit haphazardly on my part because I did not see her email response to me on Friday about the victim restitution proposals, but we got that settled overnight and this morning, and there is an amendment to discuss, and with one exception, this amendment is just has one section that is in an addition to what Representative Lee had. And this is a page and line amendment. So that means, Representative Lee, you really have to explain it because members would have to go back and forth in our in our bill to understand the impact. So if you would explain it, and members are encouraged to ask questions as we go along. Representative Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think everyone should have a copy of the amendment right now, so I can just go through it.
And this is the A7, correct?
Yes, this
Yes.
is the A7. Okay, so line 1.2 would delete a alternative definition to be used for income for the renter's credit. So it would in effect mean that AGI would be used to calculate the renter's credit, which is consistent with the House position. And then lines 1.3 to 1.8 all pertain to the fraud restitution fund. Line 1.3 would modify the effective date for final orders to begin in 2021, so it would just be a clean start. This means that if this bill were to go into effect, people who have been defrauded, who have received final orders starting in the year 2024 would be eligible for compensation from the fund. And then line 1.4 updates the in effect the ceiling for each fiscal year of the fund from 1 million to 5 million. This is an important modification because last year it's estimated that Minnesotans lost at least $121 million to fraudsters and scammers, and we know that that is on the low end because when people are scammed, they oftentimes don't even report the loss because of shame and embarrassment. And so increasing a ceiling to 5 million isn't even 5% of that amount. And this doesn't mean that, the fund would grow by 5 million a year at all, because if folks are wondering, this is we're creating a new special revenue fund, and this money is not forecasted. And so we're just making sure that, the ceiling is at 5 million. So 1.5 is just some technical changes, and then lines 1.6 to 1.8 are modifications to reporting requirements.
Representative Lee, I think maybe you need to give a little bit more explanation on what you're removing with regard to the reporting requirements, and that they are the suggestions that have come to you from the Attorney General's office, and what they are.
Yes, Madam Chair. So these modifications are being offered in consultation with the Attorney General's office. It's my understanding that when the bill moved through the Senate side, there were a couple amendments attached, and in conversations with the AGO, these reporting requirements are unnecessary and not workable, and so that's why this amendment would modify that to make it workable.
Like a question for, I have a question for the commissioner. When we had this bill, Senate File 447, we had started off with a different date for it to be as the start date, and we had we used October 15th to make sure that, as I understand it, that we were not going to be in conflict with settlements that had already been met. And I just wonder, I just want to make sure that changing it to January 1st of 2024 does not present any kind of complication.
So, Madam Chair, members, I would need to check on that for sure. I just don't know.
You would need to check on it.
Yeah, we will check on that,
Okay.
just to see if
And
there's any
it would,
complications.
And maybe Representative Lee knows the issue and also knows whether there would have been any other settlement that presents a cost impact on this proposal. Representative Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yes, so the original date that you and I had introduced was actually in July. And when we checked with MMB, there would have been a fiscal note. So it was moved to October. The move here from October to January 1, we are double checking that with MMB right now, but we don't anticipate that that would have an impact, and actually it would help us because we're a little late in passing the tax bill, and so just the timing, pushing it out about 2.5 months should guarantee that there isn't a general fund impact, but we are double checking with MMB.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the proposal on victim restitution? You may have seen the article in the Star Tribune yesterday about the enormous devastation that it is causing across the country, billions of dollars of trusting, unsuspecting taxpayers who have been victims of scams and criminal action against them, that it's almost unbelievable. But the scams are so very sophisticated. And there was the story of this one woman, I don't think she was a Minnesotan, but where she lost $600,000 and by succumbing to a very, very sophisticated real estate deception, and that and this happens, and sometimes $20,000 and being victimized over it's just as devastating to people that represents savings or also part of their investments or retirement. And coupled with that, of course, is the tremendous embarrassment and of people who think they're sophisticated and then nevertheless fall for a scam that caused them to experience just economic collapse. So I was pleased to have the bill in the Senate and you in the House, Representative Lee, and appreciate your work on it in bringing it here. And in the Senate, it was here. We had the bill that was in there as a fourth engrossment, so it's had pretty thorough vetting, and the provisions with regard to the Attorney General's reporting requirements were added in the Finance Committee before it came to taxes, and we hadn't had a chance to review them as thoroughly as we might have wanted. So I appreciate your work on that. So at some point, and I'm certainly happy for the House to ask for time to review this if you need it, or if you want to support Representative Lee at this point and have a motion to that effect. Representative Davis, Representative Joy, Representative Badger, Gomez, any comments or questions for Representative Lee's proposal?
I don't have questions or comments. We'd be ready to move it forward to adopt it if you guys are open to it.
You are moving? You are ready?
Yep.
Okay. Representative Gomez, then. moves the A7 amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion prevails, and the provisions that are in the bill, that are in the Senate bill, they're in more than one place, would be adopted. And I wonder, Ms. Pollock, I have them on a sheet upstairs, but I don't have them now. If you could just say what those are. What provisions, we adopted this amendment, 2 provisions. Well, and now we need another a motion to adopt the provisions dealing with victim restitution as amended by the A7. So I think it's important just to know exactly where they are. Ms. Pollock? Or Representative Lee, do you know where they are that you could tell us? Or somebody? They're in more than one place in our proposal, so we need to identify them to make sure what it is that we are thinking about adopting. Ms. Pollock.
Madam Chair and members, the provisions in the Senate miscellaneous article would be Article 10, Section 8, Section 9, Section 11, and Madam Chair, I think that is it because we deleted Section
We deleted Section 12.
12.
Representative,
Section 18, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
so 11 and 18? Or
No,
12?
Madam Chair, I'll start over.
Okay.
The provisions pertaining to the Consumer Protection Restitution Account in Senate Article 10 are Section 7, I'm sorry, Section 8, 9, and 11.
Representative Lee, is that your understanding as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it might be helpful for House Counsel to maybe go through this. I can as well, just because we drafted the amendment. Ms. Pollock did a great job.
We're happy to hear from House Counsel, who is going to
Yeah.
point that out. I mean, you have to go to the Senate bill because
Yeah,
they're not in
well,
the House.
Otherwise, I can as well.
Okay.
So I think just maybe Mr. Clayman, could start with, do you have the A7, Mr. Clayman? Okay. Because I think we're starting with Article 1, Section 18, right?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair and members, I was just conferring with my colleague, Mr. Williams, and we were thinking that if the House agrees to take the whole thing, as it were, then Article 1, Section 9 would also be included. That's the income tax subtraction for the payments.
And the effect of that is, just to get it on the record?
And Madam Chair and members,
Makes them non-taxable.
Pardon?
Makes those payments non-taxable.
correct, so the subtraction would allow a taxpayer to subtract the amount of the payment from their state, their Minnesota taxable income.
Yes.
If it's not deductible federally, because through conformity, the state would pick up that subtraction.
So that's Article 1, Section 24, correct?
We believe it's Article 1, Section, actually, Madam Chair, my colleague, Mr. Williams, may have a better handle on the details for these two provisions.
we are dealing with the language as it presented to us in SC 3276, correct?
Chair, rests, and members, yes, that's the version of the draft I'm looking at. So I think that the confusion is the underlying amendment deleted the portion of the subtraction that affected the renter's credit.
Yes?
However, if the committee wishes to adopt the subtraction, we would need to adopt the income tax subtraction. That's the one Mr. Clayman mentioned in Section 9 of Article 1. Section 24 of Article 1 is the subtraction for the homestead credit refund. However, that section also includes the language pertaining to the coerced debt subtraction. So if the
Yes.
committee's not ready to adopt that yet, maybe you'd want to hold off on adopting that section.
Well, we had, okay, we're trying to treat, I think Representative Lee's amendment that I agree with, tries to treat payments that would come to an individual, whether from coerced debt or from a victim's restitution fund, exactly the same with regard to they're not taxable income, and they're not to be used as part of the definition of household income with regard to the renter's credit. Is that correct, Ms. Pollock?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, could you please repeat?
Sure. The House Counsel is saying that since the treatment of coerced debt itself has not been adopted, just to make sure that we see that the proposal here is going to treat payments from coerced debt and payments from this restitution fund in the same manner, both as non-taxable income and the eligibility for, or the requirement that it not be part of household income for, I keep getting those mixed up, that it be a requirement that it be treated as household income for the renter's credit. So Representative Lee, we could, if the House is ready to act on it, indicate that your amendment does not include the reference to coerced debt and only to the restitution fund if we want to adopt it now, as opposed to waiting until the House has had a chance to review both the Senate response as well as the A7 to the underlying proposal. So would you like to address just this underlying proposal for restitution and then see what happens when we get to coerced debt?
So, Madam Chair, I think also if we could pause on that proposal, because I think what Mr. Clayman raised is actually perhaps an omission in if the intention of the A7 is to just address the restitution fund as a whole, I think Mr. Clayman's point is that Section 9 of Article 1 on starting lines 12.25 to 12.31 would actually be appropriate to add to this amendment, because it would make sure that these payments are subtractions as well. And so I don't want to confuse this with the coerced debt, but I just also want to make sure that we don't lose Mr. Clayman's point. Yeah.
Thank you. And Representative Lee, we're going to take a short recess here to make sure that the amendment is organized, so make sure we get what it is, what provisions it is as a proposal is being amended, and that all the sections that should be part of the overall motion are indeed correct and agreed upon by Senate Council and House Research. We're in recess. The meeting will come back to order, and I believe council from both the House and the Senate have agreed on, well, we've adopted the amendment, but then in order to adopt the proposal, the House, invite the House to make a motion reflecting the combined understanding of Senate Council and House Research. And if someone would make that motion, if you want more time to think about it, that's just fine, but that would be the motion that we can have before us. So is someone over there ready to make that motion?
Yes.
Representative Davids.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like Mr. Clayman to state my motion.
Explain.
Madam Chair and members, Chair David's motion would be to move to adopt Senate Article 1, Sections 9 and Sections 24, and Senate Article 10, Sections 8, 9, and 11, as amended by the A7 amendment. And I can restate the motion again if...
Does anyone need the motion to be restated?
Okay, Madam Chair, that's my motion.
It's your motion. Is the House ready to take a vote, or do you want more time to think about it?
We're ready to take a vote, Madam Chair.
Anybody on the Senate side? Okay. All those in favor of the David's motion that Mr. Lehman just read, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion prevails, and the article of the proposal in the Senate regarding victim restitution as amended by the fine work of Representative Lee is adopted. We will now then, as I indicated at the beginning, except my good friend Senator Putnam, who was going to go into the discussion of the ag proposals. Is he just, everybody has a lot of, still, even today, things that are going on that take them out of various meetings.
Madam Chair, he just sent me an update, he's almost back.
He's almost back, so we're going to take another brief recess until he returns. We're in recess. Member Putnam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members, I'm grateful for another chance to talk a little bit about some of these ag provisions. My hope today is to either achieve some degree of assent to some of these issues or to get a little bit more clarity on what I need to still fix. That's my hope. And I have been trying to meet over the weekend. Unfortunately, weren't able to get a chance to talk things through yet. So just some of the things that I want to go over very quickly if I could. Again, we have the provisions that we've discussed before. And I'll just sort of enumerate them very quickly. Some definitions of family that would change. One to include nonlinear relationships, and another to change definition of family from 12 to 18. That's especially important to me in my community. We have a lot of East African friends who are going into farming, multi-generational families. And so being able to understand what a modern family looks like in the context of agriculture is very important. And then there's also the market farming provision that we've discussed a fair amount. And I wanted to mention all three of those things kind of in concert together because we've worked with AMC, the Associated Minnesota Counties. I understand the reservation about potentially shifting tax burden to property taxes, but these provisions are supported by AMC because they realize there's not going to be significant fiscal consequences. In most of these circumstances, we're dealing with like 4 or 5 people in a county. So it's really not going to be all that significant fiscally. I also did want to mention the beginning farmer tax credit and some changes that I'd like to offer to maybe make it a little bit more palatable. The first is I'd suggest that we cap the beginning farmer tax credit at $6 million a year for the first 2 years to take out any potential concern that the credit would get too expansive. That's a way to put in some guardrails to make sure that we're being as fiscally responsible as possible. But then that we would lift the cap at the end of the next 2 years. One other suggestion that I have, again, in effort to make it more workable for everybody who's interested in this idea, which I think is all of us, frankly, is to limit it so that it can only be used once in a lifetime. Beginning farmer tax credit can only be used once in a lifetime. In some circumstances, you have people who are using it in subsequent years. It's not that hard for our friends at the Department of Agriculture just to put in a little box that says, have you done this before? And if you have, then you're no longer qualified. Those are 2 changes we can make to the beginning farmer tax credit, which I think would hopefully make it a little bit more palatable to people. And then, of course, we still have the interest of conservation grazing maintains a concern. I understand the issue with using nonprofit space for potentially for-profit endeavors. In this circumstance, I think that since the profit is going to the cattlemen and not to the nonprofit, it's a little bit more complicated. The nonprofit gets the profit of having the land tended, but there's no sort of immediate financial gain to the nonprofit itself. Any profit that would occur in this context happens with the increased value of the cattle who graze there. So I don't know if that deals with that concern or not, but that's one variable that I think is pretty important as we think about some of these different issues. Again, I just wanted to kind of go through them again and see if there are areas that are still stuck that I can work on. Again, unfortunately, the absence of being able to talk outside of this space, wanted to bring it up here as well. So, Madam Chair, that's the basic rundown of all things ag at this point.
Madam Chair?
Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can you, I understood you want to add like step cousins to the definition of family, or cousins and nieces and nephews and stepkids. Then you said something about 12 to 18. What's this?
So that's the other part of it too, is that we have some really large families going into agriculture. And so this would be a definition change in the size of a family that counts as a family farm operation. Right now that limit is 12. And so the Senate position was to increase that to 18.
So I have concern about adding family members like cousins, nieces, nephews, and doing that along with a big 50% increase in the number of people, because that just doesn't, that's really expansive. This, as you know, I mean, the thing is that this has expanded and expanded and expanded over and over and over again, even in the time that I've been here. It's like, if you look back at the history of it, it sort of started pretty small. And this is the way these things go. Like, it seems that every year there's proposals to sort of make these, especially these, the ag property tax things, just
they just expand and expand and expand and expand, and I don't know what the limit is. I do know that, increasing it to 18 and allowing cousins and nieces and nephews is just, it's almost starts to just gets really out of control, and I think that that's something that we discussed, and we didn't include it in our bill because we thought it was far too expansive. And then I don't understand about cap the cap, lift the cap, and what are the financial implications of this? Because I think that, we're talking about things, okay, maybe in a normal year, a couple $1 million isn't a huge deal on a tax spreadsheet. A couple $1 million on this tax spreadsheet is a huge deal. And we have not had a conversation about how we're going to meet our target before we even talk about spending a couple million on this, millions on the PGA, millions on SAF. There's millions on direct file, millions on baby bonus. We all have millions on, a special new established aid for a certain part of the state. So I guess I'm, absent having those conversations, it's sort of like anything that impacts our spreadsheet in at that scale of $1 million or whatever more a year, I would say is just, it's hard to even have a conversation about it because we haven't had the conversation about how it is that we're going to fund our bill. How are we going to meet our target? Because we're here kind of talking about these things for the third time, but we can't talk about lifting the cap on the beginning farmer's credit or spending any millions of dollars on literally anything else until we can, have a conversation, which I believe that we need to have, just conferees about how we're going to make the target in our bill. If we cannot advance that, we cannot advance our bill, and we certainly, until we have that conversation, can't talk about provisions that, raise the amount of cuts that we have to do when we haven't even agreed on the cuts that we have to do already. So I'm curious about capping the cap and then lifting the cap. These are the kind of we're gonna, pushing spending off spreadsheet is something that we've been told we can't do. So it sounds like it might be a little bit like that, but. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rep. Gomez. I think Senator Weber would like to talk on this too, but just briefly to clarify those points a little bit quickly, if I may. So the initial cap on the beginning farm tax credit is to provide some certainty. Because if we remove that cap in the first 2 years, we're not entirely sure what the cost is going to be. So I suggested that as a way of making the proposal a little bit more palatable because there would be a little bit more clarity. Sort of a belt and suspenders kind of situation where we would know that we weren't going over too much this way or the other way. We just sort of know what it was going to be for the first 2 years before we did it. But then removing the cap in 2 years because that's the ultimate goal. Because as I said earlier, 40% of the people who applied for this were turned down. The other thing, restricting it to once in a lifetime is again a way of making it more fiscally responsible and also more inclusive, more impactful for more people so that we don't have people applying for the credit every year in succession. Again, these are concessions that I was thinking of as ways of making this seem a little bit more concrete and a little bit more manageable in the context of the spreadsheet, but also in terms of as its function as policy. To the family size situation, I see when you put those two things together, I do see that there is a potential challenge there in the sense of exploding the notion of family. But what I would say is that those families are large anyway right now. And we have more families that are intergenerational that are getting into agriculture right now. That's why for me the 12 to 18 thing makes a ton of sense because we do have bigger families and families that are more complicated. Getting into agriculture right now. So it's more of a reflection of reality than it is a reality of the modern farming experience than it is really a proposal for significant change in one direction or another. Because like I said before, the fiscal impact of all these things is negligible because there are so few people who would take advantage of it right now. But in terms of understanding what's actually happening on our farms and our communities and our families, I think it's important that we realize that some of these families are bigger. And sometimes a stepkid is part of the family in that context. So those are some things that I think were still pretty important in some of these issues. Senator Weber?
So I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
I'm going to let Senator Weber comment on the proposal and we'll come back to your to your
I just wanna know how much it
questions
costs.
And for anyone else that has a question. Senator Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that we're not combining two issues with parts of this. The expansion of the family definition for qualifying members deals with those family members who would then qualify for ag homestead credit. And that is the expansion into aunts, uncles, cousins, et cetera. And the 12 to 18 actually deals with that would be Senator Anderson's bill, correct?
It is, yeah.
Deals with those members, the total number that can be involved in an LLC, a separate ownership entity. And so those are two separate things. And to my knowledge, there would be no cost to the general budget for either of those items. And as Senator Putnam indicated, in visiting with AMC reps, and I've carried parts of this legislation before, they recognize the importance of keeping the family farm concept together, and it is believed that this is one of the ways in order to do that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Did you have other questions, Representative Gomez, to the proposals, not to the process, if you would?
Yeah, what's the cost? I don't know what capping the cap and lifting the cap means. What's the cost of what's of the modified proposal?
So, Representative Gomez, we are bringing, and I've asked Senator Putnam to put forth from our bill those various provisions that addressed our ag policies. Not necessarily at this point, because making a proposal, although he's working to make sure that if it is going to be something we consider, that it be as fiscally tight as possible. So if others on the House or in the Senate have suggestions for how to achieve that, or even other proposals that maybe aren't in your bill that are certainly relevant, that we could have a bill finally that addresses the the needs of the farming communities in our modern agricultural situations. And so this is not, this is not an argument. It's not meant to be confrontational. It is just, here are some ideas that we hope that by tomorrow we could come to agreement on some of them, all of them. I certainly hope we're not going to say no to everything that has a positive effect on modern agriculture. And so what I'm hoping we're having here is just a discussion of these items. And if you don't need any more information, you just want to think about it again. If you have ideas for Senator Putnam, other ways of improving what's in the Senate bill, please contact him, please talk with him, and we'll see how quickly we could come together on something. We certainly were able to do that with the Senate bill dealing with consumer fraud victim restitution. It's a little bit confusing there at the very end, but we all knew what we were talking about. We were familiar with it. I had no problem with considering, and had indicated that last Friday, of Representative Lee's changes to the victim restitution. My bill that was in the Senate, not in the House. So we can act quickly when we understand what's coming forward to us. But if there are no further questions about the proposal or the proposals, I would like to go back to the Senate response to.
Chair Rest?
Yeah, I'm not finished, to House 52225, because I would like for us to be able to show our leaders that we're making progress. And although I said it was an all-or-nothing proposal, at this point, that's for your side, it's an all-or-nothing proposal. For our side, we would remove from our offer Section Senate 1 of Senate Article 2, Senate Section 6, Senate Section 9, dealing with Class 4D1, Senate Section 10, Senate Section 17 to 20 with border cities changes. So that is no longer a part of our proposal. What is left is simply the House offer on May 22nd, 25. Since it was your offer, we would accept it, and we will indeed make that motion now to Senator Putnam will move accepting the offer made by the House
Madam
on
Chair?
Section 2225 with the exclusion of those items. Discussion.
Yeah, could you just walk through what you're, so you, the offer that you gave us at 1127, you're now modifying verbally?
To remove any extra provisions that were not in your offer on 52225. It is simply, it's exactly your offer from 52225. I would expect, since it was your offer, the vote on this would be unanimous. So I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of the,
House Section 1 Alliance.
Madam Chair?
oh, I'm sorry. I also have, I remove House Section 1 Alliance because that was not in your, offer on May 22nd. Is there anyone in the House that wants to object to adopting your own offer? I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the modified offer from the House?
Madam Chair,
from
can we
the-
take a recess, please? For a few minutes? Since you're changing the piece of paper that you handed to me a half an hour ago, maybe we could just.
Actually, no, because this
Okay.
is your offer.
Cool.
And it is not anything different from what you offered on 522. We have to be demonstrating that we're ready to move forward. The Senate is accepting your offer. One would think that the House would vote for their own offer. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no.
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 The motion fails. Let it be known to our leaders that the House cannot even accept their own proposal. Now we will take a
Madam
recess.
Chair, we just wanted a recess. 3 minutes.